everything we have to
Beer.
is
Beer.
itself.
Beer. So many choices.
Only no function beer well without.
Woohoo! Beer! Hello and welcome to another episode of Beer Busters. We're going to bring in the news and reviews, of course, of your favorite brews. My name is Dan Baker, and I am joined by my co-host and brewologist,
Steph Hefner.
and of course, the demented and fermented
Wayne Baker.
We are somewhere that we've waited a long time to be. It's been a while. We foreshadowed this episode a while ago at this point. How long ago was that?
Episode 120.
120. So in podcast episodes 30-something, I don't exactly...
38 maybe?
Is that what number this
158
is?
minus
it says it right in
120.
front of me. Yeah, 158.
Math is hard.
So 38 episodes ago, which probably puts us at a
It
little
feels like
over
a lot more than that.
year.
It does.
That's
Feels
probably
like
going to be a year and a half,
year,
right?
Almost a year and a half.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we were at Local 44. For anybody who is not familiar with where we were at episode 120 off the top of your head, because Lord knows I wouldn't be had I not been reminded. But that means we are at Fermentery Forum. We made it to this is Kensington, I guess, right?
It is, yeah.
All right, cool.
I like how every time we're at a place in Philly, we have to verify the neighborhood that we're in.
I've lived in Philly for 13 years, and I still don't know which neighborhood is
You've
which.
been here that
There's a
long.
lot of
Yeah.
argumentation about which neighborhood is which.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially like where we live, we're in between like three
We're like
neighborhoods. and I don't know
we're
what
in a
to call it.
demilitarized zone between Point Breeze and Girard Estates.
Oh, don't forget Newbold. We're on the edge of Newbold also. Because like my dentist at 19th and Passyunk is Newbold, which is
Didn't
like
we have
3
this
blocks
discussion
away.
at Brewery Arts?
Literally every
Yeah.
time we're here, yeah. Or we're in Philly when we record.
Yeah.
But since we are at Fermentery
Hashtag
Forum,
pandering to the locals.
exactly, we have with us
Ethan Tripp.
Ethan. Thank you for having us out here, man.
Thank you so much.
I'm loving the decor that you have here. All the barrels that are over
The
here.
pyramid of barrels, finally.
Yes,
Yeah.
it
Right?
is very impressive. And
Oh, this is the first time you're seeing
Yes.
it.
Yeah,
This
we
is
haven't
your
been here
first time
before,
I've been
yeah.
here
Yeah.
a couple of times.
Yeah, and we were talking before we started recording. You have 54 barrels currently.
Yes.
Right? That's a lot, and most of them are filled. Correct?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Okay.
And we should let everyone know right off the bat. So Fermentery Forum isn't itself a brewery; it's
Right.
a blendery.
Yeah.
where you do a lot of like lambics and blending beers here. Hence the tower of barrels right behind me.
Oh, I was planning on getting there. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you for bringing it
We'll
up.
dive into that.
Yeah,
a little
we'll
more.
get into that in a little bit. 'Cause we have so much that we need to do. First, I want to mention that we have a sipping beer, and it is delicious. This one is Foos, correct?
It is.
Oh, it's so good.
Thank you.
So what was this one again? I know there were peaches with it,
Yeah,
right?
so
Millions
so
of peaches?
Oh,
Yeah.
God. I didn't even think
I
of that.
had to.
Many,
Come on.
many peaches. Yeah, so it's just a very simple wheat beer, around about 5%, and there's about 2 pounds per gallon of peaches from Three Springs in it. And yeah, it's all about having a nice, soft, subtle peach character, a little bit of acidity, but like balanced and
Oh, yeah.
nice to drink. Yeah.
And this was, if I was reading the notes correctly, this was aged in stainless with oak staves. Mm-hmm. So is that sort of what makes it like feels fancy? I mean, you say you're very humble in saying it's a very simple wheat beer, but it certainly doesn't taste like just a simple wheat beer.
Well, I guess that would be just the house mix culture, the microbes. We sort of do our job as shepherds for them, try to give them a nice environment, but a lot of that expression is just coming from what they do.
It's delightful.
It is really
I
nice.
really enjoy
This
it.
makes the drive into the city on a Friday evening worth it. Now, granted, I wasn't the one behind the wheel, but this is just spectacular.
I really like the just like hint of acidity, like that
Yeah.
little touch of tartness, but it's still refreshing. It still goes down.
And
fairly
you get
smooth.
the peach.
You get it, and it is,
but it
very
doesn't
soft
overwhelm.
And, yeah,
Yep.
and it's not super sweet. It's
Yeah,
really nice.
So
Yeah.
well balanced and delightful.
Yeah, one of the things that's a challenge with peach beers is they can tend to get quite acidic, and so playing that line is something that we've done a lot of sort of
Yeah.
tweaking with to make sure
Yeah.
that we get in the right zone with the acidity.
You definitely get that jowliness. I guess you get that punch, but then it goes away, and it's a very delicate. It's almost like the beer is teasing you a little bit because you get that, and you're like, oh, and you're expecting like this is a sour, but then it's like, ooh. And
I
then,
like that.
ooh.
I like beverages where there's something about it that you need to sip it again to try to find.
Yeah.
That's a fun. It's better than getting beat over the head with something.
That's
I
true.
think.
Well, mission accomplished with this one. For
Yeah,
sure.
Thank you
I
so
agree.
much.
I
Thank
agree.
you.
Well, we do have a lot that we have to get to. So first off, I saw a couple of things worth mentioning, and
That should be the news. I saw a couple things.
I saw a few things.
I read a few headlines, but not the articles.
No, I actually read.
Because I'm a
one-
millennial.
One's an article and one was an infographic.
Also, find us on the internet.
Sorry. It's starting already.
It started a while ago. So apparently,
Evidently.
I knew it. I always do that.
Apparently.
Dan can't say apparently around me anymore because
Nope.
every time he does, I go, apparently.
Apparently.
Evidently, your favorite beer might say a lot about you and more than what you think. Whether you are staying in on a Saturday night and enjoying a documentary or you value art over sports, that makes you an ale drinker rather than a lager drinker.
Wait, what makes you an ale drinker over a lager drinker? Say it again.
If you stay in on a Saturday and you enjoy a documentary and value art over sports, then chances are you're an ale drinker, according to new research.
What if you value both ale or both sports
and
and
ale?
arts?
I know. The same thing went through my mind as
and you
I
like to watch a
continued this.
documentary, just not on a Saturday night.
Well, and the other thing is that we're just going to rip this to shreds right off the bat, Dan, okay? Just
One
so you know,
paragraph, and
all right.
that's why I wanted to talk about
But the
it.
other thing is that the vast amount of craft beers are ales and the vast amount of macro beers are lagers. So I think it's more about, like, if you're the kind of person that seeks out craft beer, then you're probably more the sort of person rather than an ale. Ale and lager is really broad. I mean,
Oh, yeah. Well, that's as vague as you can get besides saying just beer.
beer. It's one
Yeah.
step below beer.
Yeah, exactly. A new study of 1,000 beer drinkers found that the type of beer you prefer may actually reveal a lot more about you than you think. The survey was conducted by one poll on behalf of Founders Brewing, not to be confused with Flounders Brewing, pitted the two factions of beer against each other and found that lager drinkers, or easygoing beer drinkers who prefer something less hoppy, also tend to be more goal-oriented and sociable.
Well, okay.
Lager drinkers are more likely to describe their ideal Saturday night as going out with friends, while ale drinkers lean more towards curling up on the couch and hanging out with Netflix.
This is such bullshit.
Interestingly, lager drinkers report higher stress levels than ale drinkers, which may be because they report they're more likely to work hard and show up on time for work. But despite that, ale
Wait,
drinkers...
lager drinkers do?
apparently.
Maybe there's some truth to this.
But
I
despite
mean,
that...
I do prefer a Pilsner over an IPA,
It's
that's
true.
for sure.
Yeah.
Ale drinkers are more likely, the more likely bunch to say they're happy with their job and leading a fulfilling life overall. Lager lovers also tend to spend more time worrying about their future than their easygoing ale-admiring counterparts, but they are more confident and more likely to love meeting new people. But no matter what they prefer, beer drinkers tend to be a bit set in their ways, as average beer drinkers haven't switched up their favorite beer in 4 years. Not only that, over 1 in 3, about 36%, say they are intimidated by craft beers. So this is where the plot thickens a little more.
I'm really confused about the breakdown of these statistics.
I'm really confused as to why there were even statistics done on this.
Yeah. Our portfolio has a little something for everyone, especially the lager and ale lovers, and we hope to break down any resistance to trying new flavors, types, and experiences with the right beer in hand, said Mike Stevens, who is CEO of Founders. This year, we released Solid Gold as a way to introduce more lager drinkers to craft beer, but we also stand by the success of All Day IPA to offer the most sessionable ale. It goes on, and then there's a little breakdown, almost side by side. Lager drinkers, the average salary is $38,017 a year. Hours of exercise a week are 4. Personality traits are confident, punctual, goal-oriented, hardworking.
Confident, punctual, goal-oriented,
hardworking.
make $38,000 a year.
Yeah, apparently. Worried about the future, more stressed, and love meeting new people. They are more likely to be a sports person than arts. Their ideal weekend night is out and about with friends. They're more likely to prefer dogs over cats.
Was this in Cosmo?
No, this was New York Post.
Should have been.
New York Post, brought to us by Founders.
BuzzFeed.
Good job, guys.
Maxim
Yeah,
magazine.
really.
TV shows, they prefer Game of Thrones, Big Bang Theory, Friends,
Oh,
Law &
my
Order,
God.
How I Met Your Mother, and The Walking Dead. And their movie genres are action, thriller, and adventure. Meanwhile, ale drinkers, the average salary is slightly higher at $41,318, with
So beer drinkers are poor.
pretty much.
Yeah.
5 hours a week of exercise. Personality traits are more easily frustrated, more easily intimidated, likes being the center of attention, a bigger flirt, likes new challenges, and happier, despite that they are also more easily
I feel
frustrated.
like this is as valid as astrology.
Exactly.
What you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Sample set 10 people.
Yeah, right?
More likely to be...
Two. One lager drinker, one ale drinker.
More likely to be into arts. Weekend nights curled up on the couch watching TV. More likely to prefer cats. TV shows would include Breaking Bad, True Blood, Parks and Rec, and The Bachelor. And
I love Parks and Rec.
oh, it's a great show. And they are more into romance, animation, and documentary
This is Can we just stop this conversation and move on?
That was the end of the article.
This is bullshit.
I don't understand why it happened, why these are the results, but hey, here we are.
And how many craft beer drinkers would seriously categorize themselves as an ale drinker or
a
a
lager drinker? Yeah, that's just how many non-craft macro ales even are there? I mean, most of the big ones are lagers.
Very, very few.
Yeah,
if any.
So it's a weird divide. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's an unnecessary article.
Pretty much.
Moving
it was
on.
an unnecessary study, which I find it weird that a big and well-respected brewery did it. Brewers Association, since it is the end of the year as we are recording this, it is the middle of December, even though this will air in January. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's make this one better.
Goodbye, 2018.
Fucking right.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking the other day how, every year for the past 3 years, everybody has said, I'm so glad this year is over. This year's been
and
so
then the
shitty."
next year finds a way
and
to
then,
be worse.
And then, we elect Trump, and then...
Yeah, and then he gets inaugurated, and then everything goes to hell.
Jesus.
We're not a political podcast.
We are not. That's why I'm going to talk about beer here. According to the Brewers Association, they have done their year in beer.
Are lager drinkers more likely to be Republican?
Oh, God.
Ooh.
Please
The
read the
plot
next
thickens.
article.
That's a good question.
Continue.
They all voted for Jill Stein. According to the Brewers Association, there has been overall a 5% growth in beer in the year of 2018 versus 2017, with stable and steady mid-year growth. They will again reach a new high. There are over 500,000 jobs, which is a 9% increase over 2017. Craft brewers' contribution to the U.S. economy, $76.2 billion, which was an 11% increase. We are now officially over 7,000 breweries operated in the U.S., with... by the end of the year, it's supposed to be a 20% increase over 2017.
Wow.
At the time of writing this, I think they said there were 1,000 that had yet to open.
It is possible that it will surpass my unique check-ins on Untapped.
Yeah,
it has yet to, but
you're slowing down because
I
of
have
medical.
slowed down
but,
significantly.
yeah.
So
there's over 4,000 plus brewing companies. 85% of 21 and over adults live within 10 miles of a brewery. 95% of the breweries are reinvesting. Craft brewers are reinvesting their tax savings from a recalibrated federal excise tax on beer to purchase new equipment, hire new employees, increase benefits,
And pay them appropriately?
Well, hopefully. And increase charitable contributions. The most entered category in the 2018
It's all hot
GABF.
takes today.
This is what annoys me. The most entered category in 2018 in GABF. Who wants to guess?
Oh,
Hazy
gee, I wonder.
IPA?
Hazy IPA,
Yeah.
juicy or hazy IPA. There were 391 entries, and it's an estimated 1.1 million home brewers, as reported by the AHA. So craft beer is still on the rise. So that bubble that we keep talking about popping hasn't popped.
It's not a bubble.
It's worse than a bubble.
It's worse than a bubble.
Well, what's worse than a bubble then? A dome?
A house of cards.
It's a hot air balloon. It's
I
one
would-
giant
I wouldn't
hot air
even
balloon.
compare it to anything spherical. It's
Let's talk shapes. Let's start basic.
It's a
Is
trapezoid.
it cubic?
it's flat.
Oh, Jesus.
like the Earth.
Are most hazy IPA drinkers also flat earthers? Is that in the study?
Yes.
We are just we
Good
derail
Lord.
faster and faster.
Yeah, we
every
Well,
time.
really do.
Every
We
time.
also alienate more and more of our audience.
Like that's why I kind of like getting these kind of bullshit articles and things early on, because we can just destroy it, and like I feel like it helps break the ice a little bit more because we're all making fun of the same thing together.
That's true.
Anyway, here we are in Kensington. We're at Fermentery Forum.
Yay.
Still drinking all this food, and good God, is it delicious. So Fermentery Forum. I know, obviously, Ethan, we had you on episode 120, as we've been reminded, but there's been a lot of real world time between then and now.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm sure people that are out there may not have totally remembered things about it. So long story short, and Wayne had mentioned this earlier, you don't brew your beer here. You blend it here and then let it age in the barrels and do what it does. Now, you are brewing, at least when we talked to you before, you were brewing at St. Ben, right?
Yep.
Are you
Still
still
there.
are?
Yep.
Great. How often do you brew over there?
Not terribly often. And we have a pretty small operation here, and the beers tend to take a while in fermentation. We don't have a ton of space for packaging, so oftentimes we're waiting for things to kind of get out of the way before we can do another blend. So it's around about once a month average, so not that often for
Oh, yeah,
a
so you
craft
don't-
brewery.
okay.
Yeah. Most of the work here is tending to what we've got going and our opening hours and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Did I read correctly that you the wort travels via like a U-Haul truck
Yeah, I was
between
gonna ask
there
that.
and
We rent a
here?
U-Haul, yeah.
That's awesome.
We have IBCs. We chuck one in the back of a U-Haul, bring it over there, fill it up, watch the suspension curdle to nothing, drive very slowly,
Yeah.
the 3 blocks it takes to get here. And then we have to pump all the wort out before we can move it because we have no other way to move it.
Yeah.
You don't have to
So-
go down any cobblestone streets, do you? Dan and I were on several of them.
Well,
on the
we
way.
had to drive through Old City to get
You
here.
have driven down Cecil B. Moore Avenue.
okay.
Yeah, we hit a huge pothole
Yeah.
on our way
Yeah.
here.
Dan swerved out of the way of a giant pothole only to go into another one.
Oh,
Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah.
Welcome to Philly.
Good old Front Street.
Pretty much. So yeah, it's interesting. It's always fun getting the wort into the building. Sometimes it's pouring down rain or snowing heavily, but we have to empty that tote before we can do anything.
Yeah, the beer's got to get here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Beer doesn't care what the weather forecast
Yeah,
is.
exactly.
No, it
True,
really
yeah.
doesn't.
Now, once you have it here, you have the 54 barrels that are in a pyramid, more or less, over here. This is a question that is probably way more self-explanatory than I can think of. How do you get the beer in the barrels, and how do you get them up there?
Oh, so the stack was put together probably 2 years ago now, and we essentially assembled it and filled all of the barrels with holding solution. It's essentially like a microbially stable solution that can sit for several months, and it keeps the barrel hydrated. It keeps unwanted microbes from kind of taking hold, and then that's supplying all of your sort of weight that the barrels would have when they're full, right? So that's sort of the stability. And as we brewed batches, we would drain and rinse those barrels and get them nice and ready, and then put the beer into them. And we've sort of worked our way from the bottom, continuing to layer by layer add more beer. As far as the out goes, we have a positive displacement pump, which kind of just sucks the beer out of the barrels.
Okay.
So we just put a hose in the top and draw it right out.
Yeah, because I was kind of curious what would happen when you need to get to that one that's in the middle right there. But
Yeah.
that makes more sense if it just sucks all of it out then.
Yep, and we have for cleaning we have a spray ball that I can insert in the barrel.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's pretty high powered, so we actually clean, or rinse is probably the better terminology. The barrel's in place.
Makes more sense than what I had in mind.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to disassemble it.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It looks very scary.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So where would you put more barrels? Because obviously eventually you're going to need more than 54 barrels.
Well, we are acquiring another about 1,000 square feet in this building.
Ooh, cool.
So that's potential. Right now, it looks like it's going to be mostly storage. We have some other ideas, but they're all sort of nascent. But for right now, it's a lot of beer to play with for how little we put out. So I'm not terribly concerned about more barrels just yet. Actually, the thing that's holding us back is package. So I need more floor space for packaged product, and that's going to help things come out faster. I've got 3 beers in tanks right now that are ready to go, and I can't package them because we don't have space.
So do you bottle on site here, right? So do you have a mobile bottler that you just wheel in here? Do you have one in place somewhere?
Oh no,
hidden in a crevice.
We use a very compact wine filler. It's an Italian style. It basically has a hopper and an array of what look like udders, and it's pretty efficient. You have a float valve, so you fill the hopper up, and it keeps kind of filling up automatically. And you put the bottles on, and the fill time is 5 to 10 seconds.
Oh wow!
It's pretty efficient, and that's been great for us. It would easily fit on this table. Tiny little thing. Yeah.
Nice.
Everything here is as simple as it can possibly be.
Right.
We're averse to overcomplicating anything unless it absolutely has to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Is this the only location where you can buy your bottles, or are they available in other locations?
We do send things out to local bottle shops when we can, and occasionally bars will have some. Martha has a couple bottles right now. Local 44 does. You can generally get things at South Philly Tap Room. But we have a few bottle shops around the city that we try to, relatively consistently have product out to.
Yeah, I was at South Philly Tap Room a while ago, and I saw one of your bottles there. I forget what it was.
We were when we did the podcast with Anthony. Beers with Anthony.
Oh
At,
God,
what's
what was
name of that
the?
place?
Oh God,
The place near Frankfurt Hall,
The
right?
place that we stumbled upon in like 2013.
Bottle Bar?
Yes,
Bottle Bar East,
Bottle
yeah.
Bar East.
Yeah, Bottle Bar's
And
great.
They had some of your stuff
Yeah,
there.
they always have our stuff there.
Yeah, that's a cool spot. So when you brew at St. Ben, how big of a batch do you generally brew at a time?
So the batches are about 8.5 barrels.
Okay.
So a little bit smaller than their normal brew length, and that's really sized around the size of the tote. Mm-hmm. You can only fit so much in a tote, and especially if we're adding oxygen, you get a bit of foam. Mm-hmm. Occasionally, we're just blowing foam out of the top of the thing as we're filling it up, which is kind of fun. But yeah, we're limited there, and then it was also sort of sized around the amount that could fill 4 barrels. Mm-hmm. So the barrels are around 60 gallons, so it's kind of in that neighborhood. But yeah, it's worked pretty well so far. In some ways, I wish that I could go a little larger, but when I start thinking about the logistics, it's like I'll deal with that.
Yeah,
a little
that's
bit.
that complicated stuff you were trying to talk about avoiding earlier. Yeah.
So I want to kind of go back all the way to the beginning, and I can't remember honestly if we talked about this when we had you on before.
Mm-hmm.
Why not a brewery? Why the setup that you have now, the blendery?
Well, sort of coming from my background as a home brewer, we were all really entranced by mixed fermentation beers from pretty early on. And that was most of what I made as a home brewer. So at any given time, I might have 4 to 6 carboys or things that were aging for a relatively long amount of time. We were bottle conditioning everything. And when the idea of starting something came along, initially I felt kind of burdened by the idea of like, well, if I want to open a place and have it be economically viable and I'm going to buy all this equipment and everything like that, I'm going to have to figure out how to brew like an IPA or a porter or something like that. And those are beers that I really didn't brew.
Yeah.
I was making beers that were meant to age a long time. That was basically it. And so I would dabble in other things, but by and large, that was it. So initially it was like, oh boy, like, do we have to be one of those places that has sort of one of every style, which is kind of a depressing thought. And then I heard about places that were doing this sort of blendery model where they were utilizing the equipment of another brewery. And if you think about it, they're not fermenting our beer, so we're tying up the brew house, probably the most underutilized part of most breweries, right? There's a lot of places that are brewing a couple times a week. They give us a day. We give them some money that they wouldn't otherwise be making with that equipment. It works out in everyone's favor, and then we don't have to drop, $500,000 on something that, for us, we'd use once a month. And it's just sitting there taking up space. Right. So when I discovered that, it was just like this light bulb went off, like, oh, there's another way to do this.
Yeah, you still get to do what you want to do, but you don't have to have all of that startup.
And honestly, right now, it's so great with all of these little breweries opening up in the city. I haven't utilized it as much as I'd like to, but I'd love to go around and brew batches with a bunch of these guys.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Because it's while St. Ben's has been wonderful to us, we're really dialed in there, and it's always kind of the same. And it would be nice to go into a different place and talk to a different brewer and have a little bit of a different experience. And we just haven't gotten there yet, but I think we will. I mean, I'd love to spread it around a little bit, because there's all of these cool little systems spread out around the city now, which is something that just hasn't been until
even
very
just
recently.
in Northeast Philly. There's so many places popping up. You don't have to go that far.
Yeah.
And it's really cool because it also sort of plays to the, on the other end, when you're doing the fermentation and the aging in different barrels and blending different barrels of things to come up with your final product, having that, like, not only are you, playing around with different fermentation and stuff like that, but now you're also like getting the wort from different places. It kind of adds that, like, everything has its own like unique provenance, and then like adding that, like, if you just had your own brew system, you would only have that on the fermentation side, but to also have that on the brewing side, that's
well, yeah, and it's fun to figure out what different systems and breweries, what the sort of strengths of their system and processes are, and then you can use that to say, well, maybe we'll do this beer there instead of that one because their system works really well for it. That's another variable.
So we kind of talked off air before we started recording about your atypical hours that you have here. You guys are typically open Saturday and usually
Almost always, yeah.
one day during the week. But it's usually quite last minute that you post on social media when you'll be open. And of course, everyone knows about the green light. When the green light is on by the door, you are open. So do you do the atypical hours sort of to be a little mysterious? And is it kind of part of your thing? Or is there a real reason behind these unusual hours?
I think it's a couple things coming together. One, we have a lot of limitations here. So, there's been periods where it wasn't quite certain that what we were doing here was even fully legal. And so being a little cloak and dagger about it was, we'll see what happens. Things are better now, but it wasn't always totally clear. We're in a weird spot, as you know. The alleyway has been described in many colorful terms, most of which I can't repeat here.
It's definitely different at night. This is my first time here when it's been pitch black, and the alley has a completely different look.
I am impressed by some of the people who brave the alley, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, when we were walking up here, I looked away and I was like, I didn't realize we'd go down a dark alley tonight.
Yeah. It's it's one of those things where you don't always pick or get the ideal thing. I mean, when you're trying to cobble something together, things get thrown at you, and you have to kind of make the best of it. But
at the same time, it seems perfect.
Yeah, like you get to make it your own, and you can be kind of tongue in cheek with come down the alley.
The mysterious alley, and I mean,
you could really play it up around Halloween.
Well, I mean, I think that we have tried to work with what the space has given us, and I think part of the reason why there's not like a sandwich board at the end of the alley or some big shiny lights pointing you up this way is just that it all gets a bit kind of. I don't know, gauche seems the wrong word, but it just feels wrong for us. It's not actually that hard a place to find, really. But expectations are a strange thing. People are coming to breweries. They expect a big logo on a wall and this kind of like Scandinavian modern inside. Like a lot of these places that's a thing,
Edison bulbs everywhere.
Edison bulbs everywhere. Everything in here is LED, by the way. Nice. We're trying to save energy. But anyway, so it's working with what you've got. And as goes to the hours, what we don't have is a lot of beer. As I was saying, it's very small batches to begin with. How much we go through is highly variable. We'll have weekends where it's like, I think we're fine on kegs, and then all of a sudden we've got nothing. It's all over the place. So doing one other day a week has been doable. We've been able to make it happen. But because of that limitation, I don't want to have it always be the same exact day. I want there to be space and time for people with different like work schedules and whatever to get out here and have an experience. A lot of our friends are in the industry, and so a lot of the weekend days are terrible for them. We try to move it around as much as we can. I'd love to be able to do more Mondays and Tuesdays. Typically, it's Wednesdays and Thursdays have worked out the best for us in terms of schedules. But we're always trying to move it around to get the most people to come here and just like check the place out. Because for us, that's the ultimate thing. Our sort of like love is kind of the Belgian cafe culture and the English pub culture and stuff like that. These quaint little places where you come and you experience the place, and that's where you have this whole experience of the beer in the environment. That's the ultimate thing for us. So we're not as concerned about pushing a lot of stuff out or making a lot of noise to fill the place. It's just we just want people to come. That's really it,
Yeah. And I think people are interested. You're definitely getting a lot more coverage out there with the beer press, and people are noticing that you're doing an impressive thing here. And I thought it was interesting, but it makes sense when you mentioned earlier, I don't think we were recording, how your crowd on a Saturday is much different than your during the week crowd.
Sure, yeah.
Which makes sense because people want to travel to go to breweries, and knowing you're usually open on Saturdays, and of course most people have off on Saturdays, I'm sure you're getting more of those beer travelers and out-of-towners, but more of a local crowd during the week.
Yeah, which is really nice. It's got kind of two faces, which is interesting. I mean, sometimes the energy in here on Saturdays is really amazing when everything's kind of going well, and you look out and you're just like, wow, I mean, people are having a blast in here. That's great, But it is chaotic and hectic and loud. The weeknights are great because it tends to be more mellow, more local, more of our friends, and it feels like that sort of sleepy Belgian cafe kind of vibe. Very neighborhood, very comfy, and it's nice to see people stretch out here and just really relax like it's their living room and have a good drink and a chat with their friends. Yeah.
I wish I had those barrels in my living room.
They
wouldn't
church
fit,
pew.
man.
They wouldn't fit anywhere. We
There's
couldn't
no way
fit
they would
one
fit.
of those in the house. Now, with what Steph was saying, that you are getting a lot of press, you were mentioned pretty highly by Beer Advocate recently.
Yeah.
You were, one of the 50 best new breweries?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Especially because you're not technically a brewery.
Yeah.
Touche.
Yeah. It's an amazing trick we pulled. That was a funny one. They reached out to us and they were very tight-lipped about what they were doing. I think I might be misquoting this, but I think I was told something like they were like updating brewery listings or something. So somebody came by and like he was a nice enough dude, and I poured him a couple beers and we had a chat, and it was good, and I didn't think much of it for months, and then this article dropped, and I'm like, oh man, it got me so good.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool that they're sneaky about
Yeah,
it. That
it
is
gives you
kind of a
also
surprise.
because- environment.
I imagine if they come into you and be like, hey, we're going to name you one of our 50, best new breweries or whatever, you could go out, if you were the type of brewery with a big sign and flashy lights, you could go out and be like, we're one of the 50 best new breweries by named by Beer Advocate before they even drop the article.
Yeah, in an article that's not published yet.
They don't want people doing that.
Or I
I'm
wonder
sure.
if they even know. I wonder if they're kind of out like, these are
Or maybe
probably
just-
the breweries.
like you
but
were
we're
on the
gonna go
short list.
check
And then
them
they're gonna
out,
narrow
I
and-
did get the feeling that he was feeling it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That like there was some kind of list, and they were making sure someone with some credentials went there and saw what it was actually like.
Yeah.
Ratings and reviews on a website that are like semi-anonymous are, can be relied upon somewhat, but I think they actually wanted to get out there. And
Plus, if you have somebody who, like, they know exactly what they're looking for, the standards are all the same, rather than, 5 people on one Saturday thought you were too crowded and gave you a terrible review.
sure, yeah.
If one person knows what they're looking for, they have the same criteria for everybody.
It is refreshing to see an entity on the internet, not just like echo chamber or whatever.
That's true.
And actually
Yeah.
like go out and do the work and like look at something.
No,
like,
it's
firsthand.
impressive. Yeah. No, I think
That's cool.
they did a really good job. I also feel like kind of kudos to them for picking a place this tiny.
Yeah.
I sometimes think that there's just a whole category of places that get left out just because they're so small.
True.
And I was impressed that we were even on their radar at all.
Well, it's well-deserved.
Someone's saying good things about you. I know we mentioned some of this last time you were on the show, but you do also have 2 partners who
Yes.
are also longtime friends, fellow bandmates. It was a punk band, right?
No, it was
Rock band?
It was a
It's
kind of weird improvised post rock, sort of soundtracky music.
Soundtracky music. I love
Yeah.
it. And you guys all homebrewed together as well.
We did, yeah, we did. We still kind of do, yeah.
Kind of do. I
Have you
love that.
branched into homebrewing any IPAs or anything, or do you still stick
I
with...
do actually. I make a fair amount of IPA at home. Actually, my wife's a relatively big hophead, and honestly, IPA is one of my favorite food beers. That's probably like a sacrilege, but I like bitter things, and a good IPA cuts the fat of like whatever you're eating. It's good with a lot of different things, just not pasta sauce.
No.
That can be pretty awful.
Yeah, I made that mistake before at a restaurant.
But no, it goes well with a lot of foods, and I'm drinking a lot of more acidic beer here, so IPA suits me well at home. I've always been kind of a bitter guy. It's like I love vermouth and Amaros and stuff like that. Fernet. one of those things.
People tell me I'm a bitter guy in different ways.
Now, of the three of you, you are the only full-time employee here, correct?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
you do everything.
Yeah. So I do pretty much all of the day-to-day kind of stuff. I mean, this place is sort of, I guess, like my brainchild in a way. And so we've all sort of developed aesthetics together, but ultimately I'm sort of, I'm coming up with the recipes and a lot of the sort of blending techniques and approaches to making beers. But, they've both been incredibly supportive for a very long time. And I think, when it comes down to making decisions and especially sort of aesthetics, there's we're all kind of like different parts of one mind in a sense. Like we're not all the same. We all kind of want the same things, but have a different approach to it or a different way of talking about it. And so like I have, especially with blends, I have a hard time releasing anything if we haven't all sat and like had it together and gone through all the things together. And I just think it's been so long that we've been bouncing this stuff off of one another that it's like, it's really, I feel really comfortable with that sounding board, and so they are integral in that sense, definitely.
Well, all of our glasses are empty.
Yeah, I was going to say it.
Shall we try?
Yeah, I can fix that.
I think we
Something
shall.
else?
I can fix that.
That's why we like you, Ethan.
See, it wasn't too loud that time, right?
No, it wasn't. That
Yeah,
was
see?
nice.
Yeah,
I was
You're welcome.
prepared for
I
it.
saw, yeah. the
Because
headphones
last
came
time
right
I
off.
thought my eardrums are going to fly out.
I didn't even know we were going to get a sound effect for this one.
I mean, we paused, so
We
this makes
paused,
it
so
easier
we-
to
I
come
think
back
some
in.
people listen to our podcast just for the awesome sound effects.
Oh, of
Let's
course.
be honest.
Just
I
to
mean,
hear
we,
Rich
we had an
yelling near me.
awesome voiceover artist on him. Well, we do have another beer, and this beer was poured from a bottle into a cool-looking pitcher kind of thing.
Is this like ceramic? Mm-hmm. It's so pretty.
That's so cool.
That is nice.
Now, question for the illiterate over here. What I'm pointing to myself for anybody who can't put that together. Why did it go into that before our glasses?
So all of our beers are bottle conditioned, and that means there is some sediment. And in a situation like this, it's just nice to decant the bottle and make sure everyone gets an ideal pour. And the ceremony's nice.
Yeah, that's
true.
what I like a good show with my drink.
Now in Belgium, don't they hold it the bottle a certain way and like put it in the fancy basket to try to avoid that? And you're supposed to swirl it a certain way.
They do that. The baskets are really nice. Unfortunately, very hard to find. I've tried. I have a few. They're not very nice. But
I'm sure it's easy to find cheap ones.
Yeah, the baskets are great if you can get them. If you see someone like Armand de Belder from Driefontein pour a bottle, it's quite something to see. And there are some cafes where they can pour like that as well, and it's like watching a magic trick. It just looks like they tip the bottle and wave it across the glasses, and they all fill up to the right level.
Now, can you like take training classes to learn how to do that? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I think it's like working in a Belgian cafe for 40 years.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
So what actually are we drinking?
Yes, I was going to ask that too.
So this is a beer called Extra. Extra was sort of inspired by a beer of the same name from Brasserie Thierry in France in the Hainaut Valley. They're a big inspiration for me. They make beers you could kind of call saisons or farmhouse ales, although they're different from what most people think about. Unlike this, most of their beers are not acidic at all, but they do have a penchant for a kind of hoppiness that is really interesting. It's different from the IPA hoppiness that you find in the States. There are some other breweries in Belgium that have a similar aesthetic. Duranca would be one of them. De La Seine would be another. But Daniel Thierry has just a specific way with hops that I really admire. And while this isn't really trying to emulate his beer at all, I liked the idea of a slightly stronger beer that's slightly more forcefully hopped. That's not an IPA. And, where a lot of people will say that acidity and hoppiness don't go together or they clash or whatever, I don't think that's correct. And this beer is also sort of kind of to dispel that myth to a certain degree. This has about 40% aged hops in it, too, so a lot of the hops in this are over 10 years old. And just wanted to kind of get that quality of this what still hops do, which is this very interesting earthy herbal kind of quality. A lot of the high notes kind of go away, and you're left with more of a dank, musty kind of thing. That's very interesting.
It's really complex. And it's like you said earlier, you like the beers where you have to take another sip to kind of figure out what you're getting there. I have to take many more sips to get through it. There was a lot of earthiness. That was the first thing that popped up. And then I don't even know where to go from there.
I really like the citrus at the end. Like there's a really nice grapefruity citrus right at the end, which I really like. But yeah, it's also one of those beers that, and I like beers that like change as you take a sip.
Yeah.
Like definitively, like a lot of things you drink do that subtly. But I like a beer that like you're like, oh, it starts like this and then it goes into this, and you're right, it does. You get like that earthiness up front. You kind of go through like a nice mellow, more traditional farmhouse thing in the middle, and then you get like that citrus at the end.
As it warms up too, it'll continue to change.
Yeah.
This really reminds me of something from my childhood, and I don't know what.
Oh, we haven't had one of those moments.
No, we
in
haven't.
A
It
while.
has been a while, yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind is like an outdoor festival, like Scenic River Days. I don't know why.
Wow.
I guess the earthiness, like on the river with the fresh grass and
There is
the smell of nature. I guess that kind of reminds me of. But
Like
there's something else in there that's just like I've had a subtle resemblance of this at some point in my life, and it's taking me back to a point in my life that I can't think of. It's so weird. Like I know it's a callback, but I don't know to what.
When you were drinking saisons, when you were like,
Oh, totally.
It's also really comforting.
Yeah,
Like, and
maybe that's what it is.
It just like is as much as a beer like this can be a feel good beer, because these are not pound-em beers. Like if you don't want to talk about your beer, don't come here, because these are the kind of beers that you want to sit around and you want to talk to somebody about these beers. That's how they are. But there's something like comforting, like it feels like Belgium, but it feels like home. And I don't know, it's so hard to describe this type of beer, but what it reminds me of is my brother lives in New Mexico, and a few years back when we visited, he surprised me with a trip out to what was the brewery called? It's a brewery at a monastery. I forget the name of the monastery
I think you wrote about that.
I did
on
write
our
about it.
website,
It's on our
yeah.
website. If you Google New Mexico or search New Mexico on our website, it will. Of course, I wrote about New Mexico beer a lot, but New Mexico Monastery, it'll come up. But that was one of the first times that I really had a firsthand experience with aged hops, because typically, as a craft beer drinker and craft beer in the States for a very long time has been very IPA driven, even back to the days of like Harpoon IPA and West Coast IPAs and Amber IPAs. But to understand like the positivity of an aged hop and the nuance of an aged hop. So as soon as I drank this, and as I'm listening to you talk about the aged hop, it took me back to that monastery immediately.
Abbey Beverage Company.
Is that what it is?
Yep.
I think they might be defunct. I don't even know.
Monastery of Christ in the Desert, Abbey Beverage Company.
That's interesting.
It took me back to that moment. So there is something super like, I don't know, comforting about this beer that does, I think because you think so much about the beer and try to think so much about what I'm tasting, like it also brings back other memories, I guess.
Is
and
it?
all the monks on all the labels are actual monks that
I remember
yeah.
you talking about that.
are
before.
part
That's
of
really
the brethren. I don't know what the correct
Brethren.
noun would be.
The flock.
All I know is it was off this road. You had to drive like 5 miles off the main road, and it was right along the edge of a canyon. And I was like, we are going to die going to and from this brewery. This is crazy.
That sounds
but,
amazing.
But,
Yeah, I
the
remember the
monk
pictures.
actually
It looked
walked
really
us
awesome.
through the yard and
Yeah.
down to the hop
Wow,
farm and
beautiful.
out to the teeny little brewery. And I mean, you felt like you were in another world. It was amazing. So fermentary form, it will bring back memories. I don't know.
One of the nice
really
things
good.
with the aged hops is not every hop is going to age well, so we have to be sort of selective about what we're looking for and what we age. But I think they're sort of like any food that you would age. You have to be selective. There are certain ones, there are certain cheeses, there are certain beverages. Any kind of thing like a pickle, a kimchi, or something like that. There are things that just have the right components to age well and to take on a certain kind of desirable character over time.
And what is the proper or best way to age a hop? Because it's not like you can just like throw it in the back of a closet and be like, see you in 40
Stick it in a
years.
drawer.
So they need oxygen primarily, and there's some idea that certain temperatures might be better than others, but if you're going through seasons, I kind of think that dry and arid is good, and selection is probably the biggest thing. You're going to look for lower alpha acid hops, so likely under 5%, and you're going to look for alpha and beta acids being as close to parity as possible. So you're not looking for something that's got way more alpha than beta or vice versa. So you're looking for noble hops, very well balanced. And then, if you take care of them, they should age relatively gracefully. And then they go through a bunch of stages of aging. And so you need to sort of try them and smell them and all that kind of stuff as they go along to try to look for the peak when they're like, okay, they've gone through all the weird stages and now they're at a place where they have something to offer. And that's just all experience. It's just trying it and getting close to the product and taking what you can from that.
Now, this seems like a silly question, but I'm realizing I don't think I know the answer to this. Do you and other blenders and Belgian brewers age your own hops to get them to the point you want, or are you actually able to purchase aged hops? Are there companies out there that do this?
So it's a bit of both. In Belgium, like I'm thinking particularly at Cantillon, if you go up to the cool ship room, adjacent to that is a whole bunch of bales of hops aging, and huge bales and loads of them. And I don't know offhand if they buy them fresh, but we've had great luck here buying old hops from other breweries. So we've gotten some leaf in sort of regular bales that you're used to seeing. We've had decent success with aging pellets. And with places like Lupulin Exchange now, it's incredibly easy. I have like hop alerts I have like emails that I get, and I'm just like, Miller Coors is selling EKG for 21 cents a pound. I'll take it.
Whoa.
So it's you never know what you're going to find, but when you start getting to that, 8 to 10 year old mark, prices get pretty low.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me not
until
to buy
they
hops.
realize.
Yeah, at some point, somebody big will
I
catch
hope
on.
they don't. We actually joked about just getting some space and buying huge lots at nothing from Miller Coors and places like that are selling obscene amounts of hops for nothing, and then repackaging them as lambic hops and making our millions. That's
Nice.
it's my jokey retirement project.
So when you use aged hops, could you still add them like you would to the boil, and does it still impart the same things, or is it something you only dry hop with?
No, we haven't done any dry hopping with them yet. Typically, it's the beginning of the boil.
Okay.
And the degraded acids have a special property where they actually dissolve more readily in fluids. Mm-hmm. And so theoretically, they don't actually have to be boiled.
Right.
Which is a strange thing, and I haven't experimented with it much.
Right.
But apparently when they degrade, they do not need the boiling that most hops do. So that's something I hope to kind of fool around with in the future. But we do the full boil on them because that's what's traditional in most beers that use them. But it's an area for experimentation for sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes the aroma on the aged hops is so incredible that I really do want to dry hop something.
Yeah,
with it.
I think that'd be interesting because I can't say I've had too many beers that use aged hops or even really learn a lot about aged hop. I always think of like you're talking about, like, you don't want stuff with high alpha acid, stuff that you would find in like IPAs and stuff, because when I think of old hops, that's what I think of. I think of like stinky cheese, old like Citra that's been sitting around that like nobody wants to use.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aging some Embryo up in the loft, and I got a bag for free, and I'm just seeing how it goes.
Yeah.
But every time I bump against the thing, it just smells awful.
Yeah.
So we'll see if it ever gets graceful. That, I don't know. High alpha acid hops might take 20 years instead
Eventually
of 10.
there's
We'll see.
a turn. Yeah.
Well, hops aren't something you taste, so I guess you do have to rely on your nose to really tell you when they're ready, if they're ready, if
Unless
it's
your
going to work.
Dan will taste that. Dan will put yeast right in his mouth.
Oh, that's right. So you guys have several different series of beers, and you also have a new one coming out. So do you want to talk about those different series and the new one?
So Origins is one of the series. That's a series of beers re-fermented with wine grapes. And that sort of comes out of, I would say probably Cantillon is the reference there. Beers like St. Laminus and Vigneron and Carignan and Pinot Dany, they've done all of these great beers with various wine grape suppliers that he's sort of become friends with out in Europe. And I really liked it. I really like the different direction. I mean, that when people think of lambic style beers, Kriek is one of the things that comes to mind for fruit beers, obviously. And Krieks are wonderful, but there's such a huge variety in wine grapes, and we can get them here, and we can get really nice ones. And I just think that there's so much more to play with here in that realm than cherries. Like, we don't do great with cherries over here. A lot of the products that are available are lacking in one way or another. So that just seemed like a place where we could play, where we were interested. I'm also really fascinated and interested in natural wines. And I like the idea of beer wine hybrids. A lot of our beer I tend to think of more in a wine aesthetic than a beer aesthetic. I mean, a lot of our methods and practices here are sort of stolen from the wine world. So that to me just seemed like a natural, like we should just do a series where it's like every year it's a different grape varietal. We may make them again. We probably won't. And it's just a place to have fun, just play with flavor, and every blend is done for the grape. So they're all a little bit different. So that's a fun one. The other one that we only have one of so far is Formation. Formation's a blend of relatively young barrel-aged beer. So those are beers that are, I'd say, we say around a year. That means somewhere between like 8 months and, let's say 16 months. And we're looking for, I use the terminology sprightly. It's like it's not the old refined kind of English gentleman or something like that. It's a little puckish still.
Yeah, a little impish.
Yeah. And so you want some of that. And then what's going to happen is that beer is still aging in the bottle, right? So when you have it at first, it's going to have some of that plucky thing going on. But then as it ages over a couple years, it's going to start to refine and get interesting. And so those are meant for people to have one and enjoy, but then I'd love to see people sit on them, because I just think over the years it's going to continue to get more and more interesting.
I might actually still have a bottle of Formation. I have to look and see, and if I do, I'll have to keep it for a while.
Yeah,
I know I still have one of your bottles left in the fridge.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Wine
We're in the midst of a complicated blend of that this year, because we've got a lot more going on, and the palette has gotten so broad that I think I think we have maybe 5 barrels nailed down, and I'm still trying to work on 1 or 2 more to round everything out. But it's probably, this new formation has taken the longest to blend, because I just think that we have so much more now, and I'm excited to get it done. But hopefully we'll get that one in before the end of the year. I really, really want to. So we have a new series coming up. The first beer, which is in kegs right now, that'll get released soon. Haven't had a chance to bottle it yet, but very much looking forward to it. And that series is called Informal. And Informal is going to be another series of one-offs. And that is going to be about being in the situation we are. We're a really small brewery, but we've made some really interesting friends in the area through connections with other breweries and restaurants and whatever. And little opportunities come our way, and it's not the kind of thing that's going to happen every year. So it's like someone's got a really amazing batch of like honey, or there's a certain herb that's just amazing right now, or there's been a bumper crop of a fruit that's fantastic. And all of these little weird opportunities that just kind of come your way. It was sort of like a way to just take all that on and say, like, we can do something. But also we have all of these barrels here, and while doing the more intense blends and everything like that is great, it's an opportunity to also play with some of them too. So it's like the first beer in that series is sort of a riff on what's called Saison de Coupage, which is a blend of a strong kind of bitterish Saison with old barrel-aged beer. And it's a very old practice. So we brewed a Saison specifically for that, selected a barrel, blended those two, and then that was re-fermented on top of the spent grape must from Origins Carmenera, which is something we'd never done before. And it was just the idea of like, well, we have this thing here right now. It's not going to be something we'll ever really necessarily have again, but it's got some life in it yet. Let's see what happens. And it's a really interesting beer. It's still clearly Carmenera, but it shows a totally different side of it. And the barrel character is completely different. So I'm really interested in getting that one out, because I think that it's for an informal series, for sort of like, you know, improvising jazz combo version of things. It's a great way to start. So yeah, stoked about that. And there's going to be more added to that. The next one in that series, which unfortunately is going to be draft only, is a blend of a young and an old beer that's dry hopped with a really good batch of East Kent Goldings, and that is kind of in the realm of Cuvitas and Gilloise from Cantillon, which is one of the dry hopped lambic beers that they make, and I'm really excited about that one. But yeah, draft only.
You're making me thirsty, and I still have beer in my glass. That's exciting.
Should we?
I think we should have a little fun.
Is it that time?
I'm already having fun.
Is it that time?
Yeah, I believe it is that time.
Insert more fun.
I know what you mean.
Oh, here we go.
Well, Wayne, I know what you have, and I'm not looking forward to it.
That's right. I did tell you earlier what we were doing.
Tell me what we're playing.
Cheers, Internet. And welcome to Happy Fun Time Games, a podcast trivia segment whose green light is always on. Today,
I like that.
We return to the gray market eBay for beer that is mybeerseller.com.
No.
A place where transactions of questionable legality are conducted under the dubious claim that all purchases are of collectible bottles and that any contents therein are incidental and not intended for consumption. Yes. What I wanted to say at this moment right now is for people who go on these sites and either sell or buy beer, or people who like are obsessed with trading beer on the internet, I just want to remind everyone that beer is not Pokemon, and I feel like you should go out to the places that make the beer or the cool places that sell the beers and get them there, and not treat them like trading cards on the internet. That's all. Just wanted to interject another hot take. I have collected a number of listings of lambics available for purchase right now on a website that, frankly, I am surprised still exists. You will guess what the asking price of these collectibles is. The closest to the actual price will get a point. If you get the exact price, the gods smile on you and you get 5 points.
And remind me, it's closest. It doesn't matter
Doesn't
if you
matter
go
if we're
over.
over. Okay.
This isn't the Price is Right.
Not Price is Right
Okay.
rules. Just the closest without saying a number that doesn't exist. We were going to begin to my left with Ethan, who will tell me what you think the asking price of this beer. User Hoppy Chick 3 has on offer a 375 milliliter bottle of 1994 Cantillon Goose Lambic, flagship beer from the brewery and the backbone of the Cantillon lineup. A blend of 1, 2, and 3-year-old lambics. The beer is in every cask is unique. There is no formula for blending and no expectation of consistency from year to year. Under proper storage conditions, fermentation in the bottle will continue for years, and you can find out what 24 years in that bottle does for the price of how much?
I'm going to say around 200.
$200. Steph, what do you think?
I always overguess, so I'm going to take what I'm going to say and I'm going to subtract like some.
Subtract some.
Subtract like some.
I'll say 150.
Steph saying 150, and finally Dan.
I just have to point out, when you started describing that, you said how much beer it is, 375 milliliters.
Yeah.
And I thought you were going to say, like you were screwing up and saying, has to offer a $375
No.
bottle of...
Or, as they properly say, 37.5 centiliters.
Right. But that being the case, I'm going to go with, I'm going 375.
375, which makes Dan the closest.
Gotta be
Oh.
kidding.
Because it's $320.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
Can't
had
believe
a
that logic
feeling
worked.
I was bidding too
You were
low.
going a little low. Yeah, I kind of heard it in your voice. You're like, $200 maybe.
See, I was also thinking around $200, but I always overbid, but apparently not
So you
always
subtracted
anymore.
some.
90s Lambics, the thing.
94. Yeah, and apparently, so I was looking, there's this really cool site, lambic.info.
Yeah, it's amazing.
The Wikipedia of... I don't
I have
That's
contributed,
cool.
actually.
Yeah. Oh, cool,
Nice.
cool. I'm not like super knowledgeable about the whole lambic thing, but it's really interesting, and I got a lot of use out of it for this game. But they listed bottling. Well, they listed. There were two different.
their
dates.
data on specific bottling dates.
Yeah.
Labels, all that stuff. If you want to actually know specifically the lot that your bottle came from,
You can look it up.
they're doing the best job you could possibly imagine at tracking all that stuff down. It's pretty impressive.
And they listed bottling dates for this beer, 1982, and then the next one was 1994, and then it was almost every year since then. So I don't know if they took like a 12-year hiatus. That's the right math, yeah. Or what, but I thought that was interesting. So this would have been, if that is true, like the second time this beer was bottled in 1994. So yeah, $320. Moving on to our next beer, and I also want to apologize in advance for all the mispronunciations that are going to happen throughout this game. Steph is going to guess first on this one. This is one 750 milliliter bottle of Dry Fontainen Zene e Frontera Batch 1 Lambic from 2015, aged in sherry bottles. The first batch is comprised of lambic brewed on January 19th, 2012, barreled and then refined in Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso sherry barrels starting in the spring of 2013. It was bottled in March 2014 and released in August 2015. I hope you wrote all that down.
Nope.
Approximately 4,000 bottles were filled, with some being distributed to restaurants and bars around Europe and some being sold on site at the brewery, and you can own one for the bargain price of
$225.
$225.
I'm trying not to overthink this.
Yep. Dan?
I was going to go higher. I'm going to say 1,000.
$1,000.
What? That's absurd.
And finally, Ethan.
I'm feeling more like about 300.
More like about 300. I believe that puts you the closest because it is 575.
That is
US
absurd.
dollars.
That's absurd.
Yep, 2015 Zene e
People,
Frontera
there's better
batch
things
one.
to spend your money on.
But it's the first batch.
That's the thing. That's
and
why
I gotta have them all.
That's why I don't mind overshooting, because it's absurd to spend this much money on any kind of fucking beer.
So I don't know what it costs there, but I know that you can go to Drie Fontainen.
Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You can order that beer, and when you buy the bottle, they will pour you pours of both of the different sherries that the beer was aged in the casks of, and you can have those all together.
Oh, that's
It's like
cool.
a package
Wow.
deal. And I don't think it's that expensive.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
like
probably
when you're
not
getting up to
$500.
that. This is what people don't realize when you're getting up to that number. Plane tickets.
Yeah.
Yeah, just go
Just go.
there.
Yeah, just go and do it.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I 100% agree with you there.
Yeah, totally. It'll be a lot better than giving some rando on the internet $500 for a bottle of beer that they can't actually legally sell you.
It might be filled with RC Cola.
Yeah, you don't know. You don't know.
Sure, you're buying the bottle and not the liquid.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Touche.
Moving on to our next one, and this seller dutifully lists this product as a still sealed collectible bottle item. And if you're a cop, you have to tell me, right? On offer here is a 2008 Cantillon Crianza Helena, a blend of 40-month lambic from a new cognac barrel, 30-month lambic from a Bordeaux barrel, and a 15-month young lambic. This goose was bottled on behalf of the owners of, here we go, De Heren van Liedekerke. Kirk. To mark the occasion,
The
it's a
look on Ethan's face.
I'm so sorry.
Ethan's enjoying this.
I'm so sorry. It was brewed to mark the occasion of the birth of their daughter. That's a restaurant, by the way. Bottles were available for on-site consumption at the restaurant and for takeaway, and now you can have one of your own if you're willing to part with how much.
Oh, God, this one starts with me.
Yeah, and this one, I just want to reiterate, this one was brewed for a specific occasion for the birth of people who owned a restaurant and was like only made for that. So, if that
So it's
helps.
going to be expensive.
In what year?
This is 2008.
I don't know. I really overshot last time. $9.
$9.
I really overshot, so I'm just going to go 50 less from last time.
I don't know, man.
$9,000? $9 million?
$9 trillion. What's the GDP of China? Fuck it, $900.
$900. Dan says, finally. Ethan.
I'll bid rich on this one. I'm going 1,200.
$1,200.
I don't
All right.
feel so bad anymore. You
All right.
guilted me out of my high bid.
It's only a spread of $300.
I know. I'll say $750.
$750. Ethan is the closest. It's
Holy
$1,100.
Wow. That's absurd.
$1,100. Do you know how to actually pronounce the name of that restaurant?
No.
No? Okay, I just want to make sure. Because I feel like I really botched that one. All right, we're going to swing back around the horn for our fourth entry, and Ethan's going to guess first on this one. And now a one-off 750 milliliter bottle of, here we go, Boon Cuvée Lambic Stomper, an Eau Douce, released in 2014 to commemorate the 15th anniversary of the De Lambic Stompers tasting group. The goose was blended with 6 hectoliters from foeder number 36, brewed January 11th, 2012. You're right about these dates. It's very specific. 10 hectoliters from foeder number 102, brewed on March 24th, 2012, and 4 hectoliters from foeder number 13, brewed January 4th, 2010. The blending took place on March 20th, 2013, and the bottling took place on March 29th, 2013. Again, I hope you are writing all this down. The bottles were then cellared at the brewery for 6 months, and for an additional 6 months at the Lambic Stompers cellar. This was originally available to members of the group as well as online via various Belgian mail order shops. You can have one for how much?
I would put that at, I'd say it's about $200.
$200. I also feel like Ethan is the only one who's not completely glazing over as I say all these things because he actually feel like he knows everything that I'm talking about.
That is one of my favorite gooses of all time.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, so you've had it.
A clue.
Let's see. You said 200. I'll say 150.
All right, saying 150, and Dan.
I'll go higher.
Okay.
$4 million. No, $300.
$300. I may have to actually do some math here. Steph was off by $29.
Damn it.
Ethan was only off by $21 because it's $179. So close.
SOB.
So
I'm like
close.
not getting any of these right.
In fact, you have not gotten any right. Let's see if
I
we can
feel so
change
bad.
that.
I had one.
You're going to guess first
This
on
is
the next
fitting,
one.
though.
I know. You're going to guess first on the next one. Our next item is described as a very, very exclusive lambic by the seller. It is a 750 milliliter bottle of Cantillon Magic Lambic from 2016. A blend of 80% Lou Pepe Framboise and 20% Blueberry Lambic with vanilla and was blended for the Magic Land Theater in Schaerbeek. Approximately 1,000 bottles were produced available for takeaway at the theater, and 2 3-liter Jeroboams.
Jeroboam, yeah.
Cool. We're also auctioned with a high bid being 850
We have
euros.
to take Ethan along with us and put him in our pocket.
Yes, exactly.
Ethan, how do you say that?
Jeroboam.
Jeroboam. You can't have a
Go
Jeroboam,
back to sleep.
but you
I'm
can
speaking in my
get
pocket. Sorry.
you can get a bomber size for how much?
Am I first?
You are first.
$3.75. I don't freaking know.
$3.75, Dan.
How much was the other Cantillon?
There was a bunch of Cantillon.
Really? Oh,
I'm talking
shit.
about lambics for sale on the internet. They're all
that's true.
I mean, they're almost all Cantillon.
I don't know. $5.50.
$5.50, and Ethan.
I'm not as familiar with the market on this one, but it is recent, so I'm going to go $150.
$150. Dan takes it.
Oh, thank fucking God.
$575.
Oh, I feel guilty being right about
Yeah, I
this.
think that one's because the limited bottles that were produced, 1,000 bottles. So, moving on to our 6th and final entry
thank
of the
God.
game. Finally, 1 bottle of Driefonteinen Malvasia Rosso from 2003 in a 750 milliliter corked and caged format. This is a young lambic blended with a red Italian Malvasia grape juice and is one of the few beers that contains 100% Driefonteinen brewed lambic.
Driefonteinen.
You told me 10 seconds ago. It's one of those things I've seen written down a million times and I have no idea how to pronounce it.
I've had a million of them and I still
Yeah.
can't pronounce it. I'm like the one with the 3.
Driefonteinen. Yeah. I actually replaced everywhere it said 3 instead of Dree. I was like, no, I'm gonna say it wrong if I don't write Dree, which I thought was dry. Anyway, it was initially bottled in 2002 and the last known bottling occurred in 2003. Bottles were available for purchase around Belgium and were served at both the brewery and the Moeder Lambic, as well as in select markets in the United States. Many of the 2003 bottles were also available in Denmark and Belgium around 2009, as well as during the first Sour and Bitter Festival in 2012 for approximately $62. But you can have one now if you shell out how much?
2012, it was $62.
Yes.
How much markup? What's the inflation on this kind of stuff?
Like you're going to try to think about what these people are going to sell these bottles for. It's not going to make sense.
$6.50.
$6.50. Ethan, what do you think?
It's Driefonteinen. It's old, and it's an
Rare.
odd mixture. I'm going 2,000.
Jesus Christ.
Wow. $1, Bob.
I'll say 1,000. I don't know.
God.
I was going to go way less, but
1,000. Well, Steph, you're actually the closest.
yes, no goose egg.
Yes, Ethan overshot. It was $1,019.
Sweet.
Yes.
There's no
Once
need
you get
for
over
that.
1,000,
Thank you,
it's
Ethan.
like falling down
It's
a
like
hill.
nothing.
It's
Yeah.
falling down.
Oh, yeah. I would not have gotten that without you. I was going to say like $300. So
Yeah, I should have made him guess last.
I
On
know
all
on
of
all
them.
of that.
All right, so we'll add up the scoreboard real quick, and no surprise, Ethan is our big winner with 50% correct, 3 out of 6. Coming in right behind with 2 is Dan, and sitting at the bottom with 1, the last
Respectfully.
one. You got a little bit of pride at the end there. 1 point is Steph. This is, of course, the part of the podcast where we shout out to our most generous patrons on Patreon. We would like to thank from the bottom of our hearts the following individuals: James Lamberg, Joe Mansell,
You're the best around. Nothing's gonna ever let you down.
Eric Dixon,
Oh, whoop.
Nate Fochtman,
Franks and beans.
Brian Mills, Cerveceria. Oh, that's appropriate. Wolfgang von Colt,
Mama said foosball the devil.
John Jen McDonnell.
Cool.
Sorry, Jen. Marilyn Engelman,
No, I'm going to toast your ass.
Josh Price,
Lawyered.
Ron McDonald,
You're useless.
I don't mean that, Ron. It was just a slip of the finger.
and Victoria Miles. If you want to find out how you can get on this list and other behind-the-scenes perks, including our bonus podcast, Last Call, go to patreon.com/beerbusters. Dan, what do we do next?
We got to settle up.
Let's pay our tab.
Say, Yvonne, remember when I said I'd have to send away to NASA to calculate your bar tab?
Oh, yeah. We all had a good laugh, Mo.
The results came back today. You owe me $70 billion.
This episode of Beer Busters is brought to you in part by Audible. Discover what millions already have. You don't just listen to an Audible book, you feel it. You can go over to audibletrial.com/beerbusters to sign up for your free 30-day membership. Plus, you get one book to get you started. After that, each month is $14.95. You get a credit a month for a book. Good for any book, regardless of price. It's ad-free, premium audio you listen to offline with no interruptions. It's your own library to build. You keep your books forever, even if you cancel. Exclusive member-only savings like 30% off additional audiobooks each month. There's easy exchanges. If you don't love a book, swap it for free anytime. Seriously. That is audibletrial.com/beerbusters for your 30-day trial.
No. Your beers. No, your beers.
Steph, what do you got?
So I'm no expert, but I do love to drink them, so I had to go to the interwebs for this one. I thought it would be fitting to talk a little bit about lambics.
We probably should have waited for him to come back to the table then.
Well, I'm going to let him kind of give his 2 cents after I do all this talking, because he's going to sound a lot smarter than I am. But I'm getting all my info from the Brewers Association so that I get everything right. So the Brewers Association lists 3 different lambic categories under the Belgian and French origin ale styles. So let's quickly talk about those 3 styles. First, of course, is the Belgian style lambic. Characteristic horsey, goaty, leather, and phenolic aromas and flavors are derived from Brettanomyces yeast and are often presented at moderate levels. High to very high fruity estery aromas are present, and traditionally lambics are unblended and spontaneously fermented. They express high to very high levels of fruity esters as well as bacteria and yeast-derived sourness. Some versions are fermented with the addition of cultured yeast and bacteria. Lambics originating in the Brussels area of Belgium are often simply called lambics. Versions of this beer style made outside of the Brussels area, of course, cannot be called true lambics. These versions are said to be Belgian-style lambic and may be made to resemble many of the beers of true origin. Historically, traditional lambic is dry and completely attenuated, exhibiting no residual sweetness either from the malt, sugar, or other sweeteners. Sweet versions may be created through the addition of sugars or sweeteners. Traditionally, lambics are brewed with unmalted wheat and malted barley. The second category the Brewers Association recognizes is the Belgian-style Gueuze lambic. Gueuze is characterized by intense, fruity, estery, sour, and acidic aromas and flavors. Again, characteristic horsey, goaty, leathery, and phenolic aromas. I like saying those things. And flavors derived from Brett are often present at moderate levels. Old lambic is blended with newly fermenting young lambic to create this special style of lambic. These unflavored, blended, and secondary fermented lambic beers may be very dry or mildly sweet and are characterized by intense, fruity, estery, sour, and acidic flavors. Gueuze lambics, whose origin, of course, is Brussels, are often simply called Gueuze lambic. Versions of this beer style made outside of Brussels are to be called Belgian-style Gueuze lambics. The Belgian-style versions are made to resemble these beers, of course, and historically traditional Gueuze lambics are dry and completely attenuated, exhibiting no residual sweetness either from the malt sugar or other sweeteners. The third category is the Belgian-style fruit lambic. Characteristic, again, horsey, goaty, leathery, and phenolic aromas come from Brett. The fermented sourness is an important part of the flavor profile, though sweetness may compromise the intensity. Fruit sourness may also be an important part of the profile. These flavored lambic beers may be very dry or mildly sweet. These beers come by many names: Framboise, Kriek, Peche, etc. They're characterized by fruit aromas and flavors. Fruit lambics, whose origin, of course, is Brussels.
Yep.
Way to listen. Are simply called fruit lambics there.
I know there's going to be a test.
But versions of this style outside of Brussels are known as
Lambic.
Belgian style fruit lambics. There's
lambic.
a pattern here, guys. The Belgian style versions are made to resemble many of the beers of true origin. Some versions have a degree of sweetness contributed by the fruit sugars or other sweeteners.
You know, the worst part is I had the document open in front of me as you were going through it, and I still didn't.
And you've been better at listening, been following along. But no,
You're better at listening.
Look at this.
Ooh.
Look at this.
That looks
pretty.
fancy.
Look at this. It's so pretty. So most, maybe most isn't the right word, but many American brewers that brew or blend these types of beer do respect the Brussels origin and do call these beers Belgian inspired or Belgian style. But there are places that you can go that they just call them lambics. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if there's a Brussels beer police that's going to come around and like smack those brewers on the hand and say, no.
Yeah, it's one of those, and this sort of thing has come up on the show before about styles of beer that can technically only be called a certain thing if they actually come from a certain place. And there's a lot of that in the culinary world too, with food and stuff. And there's value to that. I mean,
I think it shows a level of respect well.
Yeah, and there's also but the value only extends as far as either it's legally enforceable or everybody respects it and actually, abides by those.
And I noticed, Ethan, that you don't call yours lambics. You refer to them as lambic inspired.
Well, and even then, only just sort of loosely speaking. We don't print any of those words on labels or anywhere else.
Now, is that out of respect for the original beer styles, or are you just...
To a certain extent. I mean, I don't necessarily fully agree with the strict policing of all of it, but it's sort of the way of the day, so to speak. I mean, that seems to be where people's heads are at, so that's fine. I mean, I would have to... Yeah, it's hard to say whether or not I would ever use one of those words. Colloquially, it's sort of fine if you're just sort of banding about ideas, but when it comes to printing something on a label, it's very printed. It's very there. It's very
there's no hiding at that point.
Posting something on social media, it's never going away.
But sort of from a philosophical level, I don't know. It's just if the thing tastes and smells and feels like what it's emulating, is it not that thing?
And if it's produced in the same manner, like if there's a specific process or a specific set of ingredients that go into creating a certain thing, whether it's a beer or a cheese or a wine or whatever, if you're making it exactly the same way, then yeah, I mean, it is that thing.
However, a lot of the breweries in Brussels have spent decades upon decades upon decades perfecting these beers and figuring out how to purposely blend them to get these wonderful creations. So I think, and there are no breweries in the United States that have been doing this for nearly this long and have had the chance to perfect it. So perhaps down the road, I don't know. I feel like there is a level of respect. I feel like because they have perfected this and put so much time into it, yeah, I think they should be able to. I mean, there's a lot of rules with wines as well, that certain wines can only be called if they're. I can't think of any examples because I'm not a wine. Bordeaux, isn't that one?
I think
Bordeaux?
so.
Yeah, Bordeaux. Yeah, terroir in wine is really different though, because you really are tasting the earth, and you could make an argument.
That's a very good point.
That you have the wild microbes in Brussels. It's a bit of a misunderstanding that they only exist there. They sort of exist everywhere. I mean, Brettanomyces, the terminology is British brewing fungus, so that right there just tells you it's not isolated to Brussels. So they do exist everywhere, and they might not respond the same. The different varieties might not all give the same flavors. At some point, you're splitting hairs a little bit. I always find it funny that you can call, like, no one has any problem with you calling an American Pilsner a Pilsner, which to me is almost in the same category.
Yeah,
you do see a lot
high beer styles.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
but you do see a lot of breweries that brew Pilsners that will call them German style Pilsners.
That's true.
Rather than German.
But I also
Pilsners.
don't feel like it takes the amount of time and effort to perfect. Of course, maybe I shouldn't say this because some breweries make Pilsners and they're awful. But I don't think it takes as much effort and time to perfect a Pilsner, though it is very difficult to brew an amazing Pilsner, than it does to get the nuances of what a lambic is. Because a lambic is not just brew it, throw it in a fermenter, keep it clean. Yeah,
well,
I feel like there's
I agree
more
with you.
to it.
I agree with you, but the one place that I would counter you is that most people in the United States, I would anticipate if you were to do a poll and you ask them
Of two people.
do they drink ale or lager?
of two people in Cosmopolitan, if you ask them what lambic was, they would describe Lindemann's sweetened framboise.
Oh, I agree with you.
Because it says lambic really big, it's everywhere, and it's this delicious, fruity, sweet alcopop. And so the weird...
It's delicious, though, let's be honest.
It is. The place where Harald, the sort of like high council of lambic brewers, where I think they've sort of misstepped, is that because those people are in their membership, that stuff all gets a pass. And so when they talk real high-minded about differentiating this product against all of these other things that might be lesser, they're not even looking in their own backyard. And again, I shudder a bit to even say this, but it kind of begs to be addressed, and I thought that, part of what I'm explaining here is the reason why Cantillon is not in Haral. And that was the big contention. They wanted to add a modifier to the terminologies that are used for goose and creek. And that's why you see outer creek, outer goose. The outer part was appended. It was to say old style, essentially. Why should the real product have to be called old style, right? It's because someone in the organization is selling gallons and gallons, thousands of gallons of stuff that's sweetened. And it just seems like this weird injustice that's being overlooked. Like I would love a situation where anyone who wanted to could really know what lambic was, that it was just clear. But when you have a double standard like that, can it ever be clear? I don't know that it can.
I feel like that's
counterpoint taken.
The final word on that.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I have no response.
Anyway.
So something pretty appeared at the table.
Yeah,
Do you want to hit buttons?
Yeah, I'm going to hit a button.
Beer me! Beer me! Beer me! Beer me!
Round 2, fight.
You say something pretty appeared like I haven't been sitting here the whole time.
Wow.
I meant the beer.
Okay.
Wow.
Yes, the beer is beautiful. What beer is this?
This is Origins Carmenera, so it's the second in the Origins series, and it is with Carmenera wine grapes. It's a nice kind of cranberry color.
Ooh.
And I think it expresses the grape really well. I think it's a good balance of beer and fruit right now, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it ages.
This was not what I was expecting it to taste like.
Yeah.
Same here. It's a pleasant surprise, though.
It's definitely a little harsher on the nose. Like
It's a little
smells
fruitier
like
in the nose.
Yeah, and it smells like it would be more acidic and a little more
Right.
sour and a little more tart. But then when you actually drink it, it's much smoother but still nice and dry, like not sweet.
And I'm surprised how much you get the grape. And I'm curious to see how much that changes or fades as it ages.
It changes.
But it's quite pleasant.
It's hard to... There's a bunch of argument about whether or not fruit really fades in these kind of beers. And honestly, it's hard to... Every time I feel like I have had one where I'm like, oh, the fruit's falling off. Fruit definitely falls off. Then I'll have some weird old bottle and it'll be so intense. And it just... I feel like it's always different in a way, and I don't know if it's that the fruit fades or it's just different bottlings have different levels of fruit to begin with, but it definitely changes. That's for sure.
I have to say, I like that the label on the bottle says, "We're happy to share this moment with you."
Aw.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I'm happy to share this moment with you guys.
Thank you.
Aww.
I feel like we should cheers that or something.
Yeah, we should probably try to class it up a little
Prost.
Yeah, we never do that anymore.
We
Prost.
don't. We don't.
This is really nice.
What was getting like more of an earthiness in the back end too,
Yeah.
as the fruitiness dissolves out a little more.
I
And
wish
it's-
we had a wine drinker here because I'm really curious to hear what a trained wine drinker person. What are they called?
A connoisseur.
Yeah, but don't they have?
yeah.
Sommelier.
Sommelier.
Yeah,
There it is.
I would be curious because I feel like there's so many nuances to this grape flavor that I don't even know how to comprehend or communicate. And I feel like a wine drinker
Wet
would be better at that. Like we can do horse
Just say wet
blanket,
rocks.
and that's the trick.
Freshly cut garden hose.
Freshly
Wow.
cut garden hose. I like that one.
That's nice.
Now, if people want to find Fermentery Form online, Ethan, where should they go?
Fermentaryforum.com. Instagram is fermentary_forum. Facebook is some combination of those two words. I can't remember which one.
Facebook is just Fermentery Forum.
Thank you.
Aha.
And you're not on Twitter, right?
No,
Okay.
no.
For anyone who, like me, forgets how Fermentery is spelled, E is the only vowel.
E is the only
Oh.
vowel. It's a popular
Hold on.
mistake.
I wonder if the fermentaria has made people more likely to misspell fermentary because
Probably.
they
I
have
think
an
it's
A
possible.
in there.
Yeah.
Because that definitely calls to mind when you think because and at least around here where you're aware of Tired Hands and their fermentaria, fermentaria, however you say it.
It's a prominent misspelling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn Pennsylvanians.
I don't
Putting too many
practice.
E's in words.
I don't practice fermentaria.
I ain't got no crystal
I was
ball.
gonna say like fooder.
Ain't got no crystal
wooden fooder.
Peron.
Cement fooder. Don't they have a cement fooder there?
Did they
Don't they have one of
they
those?
do?
I think they have
the
a
weird
cement
like
egg.
60s
Oh, yeah.
retro mod looking thing. Yeah.
I still want some beer out of that egg. I looked at
Can you
it.
just isolate that, please?
Of course.
So was a beer out of that egg.
Well, we will have someone from Tired Hands on the show next episode. So
This is true, yes.
we don't want to assume who it's going to be until we've confirmed.
Yeah,
But
this next one's very much in the air. We didn't even really organize that episode. It just kind of happened.
it did kind of happen. So we'll be.
That should be fun.
It should be fun.
Looking forward to it.
So stay tuned, friends.
Yes.
Because you're in for a treat in the next episode. Not that this wasn't a treat. Holy crap, Ethan. Like, it's really cool to see, to have met you sort of on the fly at Local 44 and having no idea what you were up to in the scene and just watched you grow. That sounds ridiculous, like you're my student or something, but it's awesome to now be recording here at your blendery and having an episode just with you and hearing about your extensive knowledge. Holy crap. Like, I knew you were a smart guy and you knew a lot about this shit, but you really know a lot about this shit. And to now be able to sample such a diverse portfolio of beers that you're blending here, it's really, really exciting. And, we've boasted and bragged about how amazing the Philly beer scene has been ever since we've been doing this podcast, almost 6 years now. But it just continues to get better. And to have a place like this right here in Philly is unreal. Like, this feels like the kind of place you would have to travel to, like, the coast of Oregon or Belgium to go to. And now, we have places like the Referend and, even OEC, even though they're technically brewing now and they're not just a blendery, but, to have places like this much, much closer and now literally in our backyard, it's exciting. And I love how your beers challenge my palate and challenge my perception of these styles of beers.
Challenge the palate
it
perception.
certainly does, because every time I come here, I drink beers that are unlike anything I've ever had. And sometimes I gush and think I have lots of words, and then sometimes like this, I don't even know how to describe it. And it's exciting. And I could be speaking for myself, but I think for those of us that have sort of been a part of this scene, as lame and extra as that sounds, for so long, like, it is refreshing to continue to be challenged and find something new that challenges us as a drinker. So thank you for what you're doing here, and please continue to grow the pyramid, and the people will come. As much as you don't want them to line up outside and wait for the green light to come on, I'm sorry, but I really think it's going to happen.
Yeah. You are
thank you
pretty
so
much,
much.
you are like the hidden gem of the Philly beer community.
Oh, for
Thank
sure.
you.
Not-
Almost literally hidden. You're down an alley, for God's sake. But no, you're right. I mean, it's different than anybody else is doing, but you're doing it so well with that extensive knowledge that you have. I mean, these beers are fantastic, and I would never assume I could get something like this in my city.
It is cool to see a newer place like this. It's not another. I mean, I love every brewery in Philly I've been to, every brewery that we've been to. I mean, everyone is making awesome beers. We've been to a few that aren't. They haven't been on the podcast, but to see a brewery that's not.
I'll list them off.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I could name a few off the top of my head, but I won't. But something that's not a cookie cutter brewery, like you talked about earlier. You don't want to have a place that has to have an IPA and has to have a stout and has to have a this and has to have that to be focusing.
New environment, same beers.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
yeah,
what's happening right
But focusing on this old style of making really interesting, complicated beers in traditions,
And
that-
yet so futuristic in some ways.
yeah.
Doing things that
Although you don't have an egg. So, I mean,
Yes.
Eggs forthcoming.
yeah, eggs forthcoming.
Tired hands, watch out. U-Hauls coming to the fermenteria.
But it's cool. It's refreshing to be to a place that specializes in such an interesting approach to beer.
Thank you.
I've got one more question. So you said you are in the process of acquiring more space in this building.
Yeah.
You were saying you were doing it more for storage. Now, do you see yourself distributing more down the road? You have bottles in some places now. Do you think you do kegs or anything as well? Or?
I'm loath to make any predictions.
Of course, no.
about there being more product for anyone. But
is that something at least you're thinking of? You're aiming for as best you can.
So the square footage problem has been the biggest problem. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how quickly this place fills up. Well, it's not really amazing. It's a tiny place. So as we're packaging things, it's just floor space disappearing. And at some point, you just can't keep moving things around. With the extra square footage, it means that hopefully as soon as beers are ready, they're packaged, they're put into storage, those fermenters are filled again. And I'd like to get it where there's a new one coming out as close to every month as possible.
Oh, wow.
And it was always a goal. It's something we haven't been able to do. Another part of that plan is potentially taking one or two of the old beers, the very early ones like Farmhouse and Farm to Table, and making that something where kegs are getting sent around the city. So we'll make it, I haven't said yet in this podcast, but all the beers are seasonal. So they're all brewed, they're all attached to a certain point in the year. We brew them once, we don't brew them again that year. Oh. And so I'm thinking of taking a couple of them year round for draft only.
That'd be cool.
It's I don't know if we're going to be able to pull it off. It's an idea. But I would like if it could happen because I think about the places that took us on early on that have been good friends of ours for years, like Local 44, Strange Loves, and Martha. I'd love for at least those three places to be able to have beer relatively frequently. We've gotten a lot of great return business from people who found out about us from those places. I think those are good central beer locations in the city, and I'd love for them to have beer. But we'll see how it all shakes out. If nothing else, bottles are going to be coming out way more frequently.
Cool.
So
good.
That's for the good.
That's awesome. I'm
look
glad
for
to
the
hear.
Bottles. Look for the green light.
Yes, the green light. Absolutely. Well, while you are out there looking at Fermentery Forum online, don't forget you can find Beer Busters. There's always beerbusterspodcast.com. Twitter and Instagram, we are at Beer Busters. Facebook, we are Beer Busters Podcast. Don't forget Patreon. We have a hidden gem coming up for Last Call. So if you want to be in on that, patreon.com/beerbusters. As little as $1 a month.
Gem?
A hidden gem.
Yeah.
Do I know about this?
Didn't you hear what he said he was aging?
Oh, you mean what we're going to drink in Last Call in this episode?
Yeah.
I was very confused.
I was very confused for a second too. I was like, are you talking about the beer we're going to drink? We're going to drink another beer. So we're going to drink another beer, and it's also obviously going to be awesome and interesting.
Yes,
so
and it's going to be great.
So go to patreon.com/beerbusters.
And if you are not at a point where you can be a patron, want to be a patron, a rating and review would be appreciated. And for any podcast to listen to, that is like our currency as podcasters, because it helps the shows that you like get in front of a new audience. Helps more people discover the show. So pass that along as best you can. But unfortunately, this does bring us to the end of another episode of Beer Busters. Ethan, thank you for having us out here, man. This was great.
Oh, thank you so much.
The beers are fantastic. It's a style that is pretty underrepresented, and you are knocking it out of the ballpark. This is great, man.
Thank you.
If you're able to get here during the week, definitely do, because you're going to want to hang out for a while.
Yes.
Pleasure to talk to all you guys again.
Oh, well, likewise.
You too, man.
Yes.
Thanks.
Well, my name is Dan Baker, and I have been joined by my co-host and brewologist,
Steph Hefner.
and of course, the demented and fermented
Wayne Baker.
I don't think any squids were harmed in the making of this episode. It's still yet to be determined. But you, my friend, thank you for listening, and we will
How
see
many
you
more
next
words
time.
can he insert till he gets to the end of the music?
Bam,
oh my
bam,
God, we're almost
bam,
there. I can
bam,
see it coming.
bam,
We're going to hit the
bam,
wall. Oh my God.
Adios.
Dree Fontainen.
Nope.
Tynan.
Tynan.